Come in and know me better, man.
Hey, you guys. Hey, you guys. Hey, you guys. Hey, you guys.
As the first Muppet movie since the death of its legendary creator, Jim Henson, his son Brian was given the monumental task of bringing the Muppets back to the big screen and at the same time delivering on the lasting legacy of what has to be the greatest Christmas tale ever told. Despite the pressure and huge uncertainty surrounding the project, Brian somehow managed to deliver what is arguably the best Muppets movie ever made, but even more amazingly, what is now considered by many as the greatest Christmas movie of all time. Whether it is or isn't, though, just about everyone agrees that it's amongst the finest ever made. But then Rob isn't everyone. I feel like the direction of the next hour or so of podcasting pretty much comes down to this one single question. Rob, did you enjoy the Muppets Christmas Carol? Oh, no. Here we go. Here we go.
I enjoyed it, but my God, I had some issues with it.
You had to. Okay, fair enough. Fair. And the thing is,
to start off with, I wouldn't call it the best Christmas film ever made.
No, I think for a lot of people, it's in that conversation, though, and this is going to be a real issue here, because I think maybe more so than any other genre of movie, so much of our love of Christmas movies is tied up in nostalgia. You just can't help it. Like, Christmas is a nostalgic event at the best of times. And this film, I always forget, this film was released in 1992. People like me have watched this, every year for the past 30 years. So people get a real connection to it. And I know we mentioned the fact that neither of us are as crazy about Elf, for instance. And I think that's probably down to the fact that it came out when we were a bit older, despite the fact that it's a decent film. But you've only watched this once, to give you a bit of an out here.
So mine every year is Scrooged with Bill Murray.
Yes, by the way, I love that film as well. Yeah,
that's the one I watch every year. We covered it last year. It's great. I'll start off by saying I do apologize. I have a cold, so if there's lots of sniffing happening, I am sorry. But in regards to the film, the one thing that really, really, really took me out of this film, I fucking hate Kermit's voice.
What, just in general or in this?
Just in general, and more so in this. The whole Mr. Scrooge, sir, can we do this? Or it's Christmas. Or sounded whiny as fuck, mate. I couldn't deal with it. But
it's a bizarre thing to kind of pick out for this film, because I appreciate, if you find Kermit annoying, and I actually love Kermit the Frog, but it's one of the few Muppets films where he doesn't play a massive role in this film.
No,
and that is one of the movie's greatest strengths, is the fact that this movie absolutely doubles down on tradition. Like, this is a traditional retelling, which is, it's very timeless take on the material. It's very sweet in many respects. And rather than kind of putting that Muppets twist on it, like, it always leans into reverence for the source material above everything else, which means that, whether it be Miss Piggy or Kermit, they're actually all pushed to the side, because I think this is the first and maybe the only Muppets film, certainly up until that point, where the star isn't Kermit. Yes, the star is Michael Caine.
And I said his voice was moany. I'm glad it was in the back. But you want to go strengths on this film? Gonzo and Rizzo. I loved Gonzo and Rizzo. Like, I found myself like laughing out loud at some of the things they do. Like, there's a story. I put it to you. Nobody can be mad at you if you just go boop on their nose. Like, for 100%. Some reason, you boop somebody on the nose, all of a sudden, nobody's mad at you anymore. I stand by that. Nobody's punched me in the face.
Yeah, and the bigger and more masculine they are, the more disarming it is. Like, if I was really angry with you, you're 6'4", you're this big, huge guy. And if I was furious with you, but then out of the blue, you just went up and gave me a little boop on the nose, I'm like, oh, bro, what do you fucking like? I just couldn't, you're right. I couldn't stay angry with you.
When Rizzo kissed Gonzo on the nose, I was in stitches. Like,
that is a big part
of this film as well. But Gonzo's storytelling, Gonzo's delivery, and I appreciate he's a Muppet, but Gonzo's delivery was fantastic. It was great. Like, I loved it going through. And I told you last week, me and my wife watched this together. She hates musicals. I'm not a huge fan of musicals either. But didn't mind the songs in this. And they didn't seem to go on forever. They seemed to tell a
mhm.
story. They were good. So
Well, that's one of the questions I've got with this, though. Is this a musical? Because my wife and I were talking about this.
I don't think it's
And
a
of
musical
course,
in the classic sense.
no, because I feel like the question about whether this is a musical is kind of the same as is Die Hard a Christmas movie? That, you could have an argument both ways. Like, with Die Hard, the argument is it a Christmas movie or is it a movie set at Christmas? And while, we've talked about this before, obviously when we did the podcast about the fact that we do think it's a Christmas film, I feel like you can justifiably make an argument the other way. And I think it's the same as this. Like, I don't class this as a musical, but if someone comes up to me and goes, yeah, but it's got like 8 songs in it, I'm like, yeah, no, I got it. But I think it's because it's in the same way I don't think Disney films are musicals, despite the fact that they nearly all have songs in them. In the same way, I bizarrely, I don't think of Bollywood movies as being musicals because they're Bollywood movies. They're kind of family movies. But it does have 8 songs. And again, it's interesting that you mentioned the songs, because I'm not sure if it's got kind of like belters right out of the gate necessarily. Like, there are so, like, Feels Like Christmas is an absolute belter. There's no two ways about it. But I feel like a lot of them are growers. Like, some musicals, you got the songs fall by the wayside and stuff like that. But I feel like this is more like Frozen, for instance, where the first time you watch Frozen, obviously you hear that one song and you're like, oh, well, that's, and it almost blows everything else out the water. But it's only when you go back to it, and suddenly, like with this, you're like, well, the Ebenezer song's quite good. Magic in the Air is good. No, I actually hate. You said you don't like Kermit. The one thing I don't like in this film is Tiny Tim. I find him super annoying. And his song, Bless Us All, is the only song in this film which I objectively just don't like.
I know you've probably got it written down. I don't know the names of the songs. I can't tell you in what order. Like I said, I've seen this once before. I saw this on Friday. We're now recording Sunday. But the one song I did like, because the tune is stuck in my head, is the da 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 da, whatever song that is.
That Feels Like Christmas.
Okay, that one then.
Yeah, that's like the big one.
That's the big one.
Wherever you may go, it feels like Christmas.
Is that the one with? Is that the one with Hagrid?
Hagrid. Which one's Hagrid?
Hagrid from Harry Potter is the Ghost of Christmas Past.
Oh, yeah, the one I quoted at the start,
yeah.
Is that Hagrid? I didn't even realise that.
It fucking looks like Hagrid.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, because I should have checked who voiced him, because I was trying to decide what his accent was. Like, at times, it almost sounded quite Nordic, but I couldn't quite place it. But, I mean, that's one of the things, we have to talk about, other than, obviously, the songs. I could go, what were the other ones? One More Sleep Till Christmas by Kimmy and one. Oh, Marley and Marley. You must have liked Marley and Marley. Well, Marley and Marley.
No.
You didn't like that?
No. Did you get? Because they're Marley, right? The one, like the Bob and whatever the other.
Bob and Cratchit. Oh, no. So, whatever.
Yeah. But they had whaling boxes.
Yeah.
Was that Bob Marley and the Wailers by any chance?
I'm not sure if it was an intended reference, but it probably should be. I guess now that you mention it.
Bob and Marley Cratchit.
Yeah, and they've got the
whaling boxes.
If that was by accident, I guess it is an amazing coincidence. But yeah, I never put that together before. But that's the thing with this. I mean, we mentioned it earlier, like, the fact that this film is this really incredibly traditional interpretation of the source material, which again, I think is quite surprising when I went back with a more critical eye. But what sets it aside is what you mentioned specifically, the whole Gonzo and Rizzo thing, is the unique structure and framing of the whole thing being narrated by those two. And again, even those two, it is that kind of combination of like basically taking it directly from the book and then throwing in these sweet little jokes. But the thing is with the Muppets...
like the laugh, not the rat, like the laugh.
Yeah, that's a great... But there are funny bits in this. But when I think of the Muppets, they're really hilarious. What I always kind of equate them to is something like Snoopy, where its greatest strength is that it's sweet and charming. And that's what this film totally leans into. But again, I keep coming back to this reverence. And what it reminded me of, like just that complete respect for the source material, is something like the Family Guy Star Wars specials. Did you watch those back in the day?
Yes.
They did like the original... Yeah. Where, you think, oh, well, that's a show which is absolutely, going for the jokes all the time. But then you go and watch those, I guess they are basically remakes of the original trilogy, is how reverential they are. There are jokes in there, but they are retelling the original trilogy with just a handful of jokes going in. And that's the approach that they take here. And I think it's all the better for it. But as good as it is, though, I don't think it necessarily does anything the best, because there's so many Christmas Carol kind of interpretations.
Oh, my God, isn't there?
I mean, they go back to the 30s kind of thing. And I was trying to think, does this do anything better than any other Christmas Carol film? And I was thinking, other than the songs, I was like, is it like, it's not the most iconic. That's probably Brian Desmond Hurt's 1951 take, similarly from the same film. We've not mentioned him yet. But is Michael Caine the best Scrooge? I was like, no. It's probably Alistair Sim from the same film. And even then, there's other people like George C. Scott, Patrick Stewart, Jim Carrey even, who I think probably do a better job. As long as you don't mention Albert Finney from the 1970 version, who is fucking terrible.
What about... fuck me, Bill Pullman. Not Bill Pullman. Why can't I fucking think of his name?
Murray.
Bill Murray.
Well, that's the thing. Bill Murray, it's I love that film in the same way that you do. Yeah. It's so far removed from the traditional Scrooge take. Like, he really is playing it for laughs. Like, that really is, and I'm doing air quotes here, a modern take, because it was the 80s, but what it feels like now is the 80s Scrooge. Yeah. Like, in the best possible way, you can't remove it from that decade.
Yeah.
And I love him in that film. But when I think of when people think of Ebenezer Scrooge, I think people still think of that classic Victorian style. And, you know, I think it all goes back to Alistair Sim and even the Robert Zemeckis film, which, you know, I like to an extent. Jim Carrey's performance is basically just an impression of Alistair Sim doing the character.
I've never seen that Robert Zemeckis one with Jim Carrey.
Oh, well, it's quite good. It has that uncanny valley thing that a lot of his CG stuff has. But, I mean, the one thing that film doesn't do brilliantly, which is a shame because it has all the potential to go in pretty much any direction it wants, given the technology, and something that I actually think Scrooged, the Bill Murray version, does better than any other version, is the ghosts. Now, that is a massive part of this film, of any Christmas Carol film. And I look back at Scrooged, and I'm like, the Ghost of Christmas Future is legitimately terrifying. They even do like a double joke where he gets in the lift with the ghost from the show, and you think, oh, well, you know, it's kind of spooky. And then you see the real one, and you're like, fuck, that is legitimately quite creepy. But the one thing it brilliantly does is that the first ghost, the Ghost of Christmas Past, is always the worst. So they play that one completely for laughs. And I remember like the one with the butterflies, I can't remember the actress' name, but she's like, they know that character's shit, so they play complete. Yeah, she is fantastic. And I think back to the Robert Zemeckis one, and the worst ghost is the Ghost of Christmas Past. It's this like wispy little like candle thing with a horrible voice. But it's not as bad as the one in this.
Yeah, thank you. Why did they think having what looked like an egg poaching?
It totally does look like an egg poaching now you mention it.
Looks like an egg poaching travel you through the past. Like, it's the creep. That thing belongs in a fucking horror film. That face on that yolk is the creepiest fucking thing I've ever seen.
Absolutely. Like, I was saying the same thing. I was like, I cannot remember it being this goddamn creepy. And I mentioned it there with the issue with the Robert Zemeckis film, is the uncanny valley thing. That is the worst case of it I've ever seen, because it's not quite a Muppet. It's not quite a human. It's like, you know, like, I don't know. I was thinking back to Alien Resurrection, you know, all those like Ripley hybrids, those horrible monsters. It kind of reminded me of that. It's like, you know, a human had an ungodly abomination of a child with a Muppet. They've obviously let it die because it doesn't deserve to live, and it's come back as this goddamn ghost. It is so creepy in such and I know it's supposed to be a bit spooky because it's a ghost, but that's not what you get. You just get creepy.
You get, and I'm sorry, I'm double downing on it. You get an egg poaching.
You totally are getting egg poaching. There's no like, now that you've said egg poaching, there's no escaping the poachiness of that ghost.
Yeah, I know it.
But it is legitimately upsetting. And, you know, this is a movie. The reason it works in so many respects is this is a movie of like a million correct choices, a million tiny choices, whether it be the design, the casting, the tone, the commitment and reverence to source material. It makes every decision is just bang on. Like, it doesn't need to be the greatest film of all time. It's like the most 8 out of 10 movie ever made, or 4 out of 5, if I was about to jump ahead. Yes, spoilers. But it just does everything right except for that goddamn ghost. And the other ghosts are really, I know you're not so fussed on the song, but they had to do the Marley and Marley thing is inspired. I'd argue that the Ghost of Christmas Future is a little bit underwhelming, especially after the Scrooge with Bill Murray version. But Oh, and I love the Hagrid version, Ghost of, which I will refer to him from now on as Hagrid the Ghost. He's fantastic, but the Ghost of Christmas Past is it Abomination? Is a poached Abomination too strong? I don't think so.
I don't think it is, because when I saw that thing come up on screen, like I said, I saw this once probably in the 90s, and we got to think now, it's hit this year, it's hit its 30th anniversary.
Crazy.
So I saw it probably 30 years ago, maybe 29 years ago. I'm not gonna actually pinpoint a date, but I don't remember that thing being like that.
Dude, I watched it last year, and I don't remember it being like that. It's crazy.
It's creepy as fuck, dude. Like,
I think maybe I'm watching it. I think maybe in the back of my mind, I'm always, because obviously we you know, and we've mentioned this on a previous podcast, we try not to talk about the movies before we get out. Like, you know, we do our own preparation, but it's all completely separate. So when I get Rob's opinion, and I was a little worried that he might like this, but this is all new. This is, you know, I'm hearing this for the first time. So of course, part of me is watching this thinking, I wonder what Rob's making of this. And when I saw that ghost, I was like, oh, Rob's not gonna like that. Rob's not gonna like that one fucking bit. And right, I was.
It belongs in a horror film. That thing could chase you through a sanitarium.
Oh, dude! Like, and it doesn't matter what it was saying. Like, it'd be like, "Oh, I come in peace." You'd be like, "No, shoot it!" Like, whatever. You would just run, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Easily the scariest of the ghosts.
Do you think?
But for all the wrong reason.
Now, I appreciate the whole thing about seeing your past, seeing your present, seeing your future. It makes you become a better man and everything like that. I totally appreciate all that. But I don't know whether it was because it was a brisk hour and 27 minutes or what. But I don't know. Scrooge seemed to turn on a penny. Like,
yeah,
for a guy who was really, really like the meanest man in the world, who like everything is just bar humbug. This is all shit. This is all shocking. The first thing he sees, he's like, okay, I'm going to change my ways.
Well, I wonder if a part of that comes back, and we'll cover this in greater detail in Score Soundtrack. But the fact that for the version we were watching, I assume it was on Disney Plus as well.
Yeah.
They removed, as they did in the cinema, they removed one of the songs called Love Is Gone. And that's a big part of his arc, is him with, you know, his original love from when he's younger and stuff.
I thought there was a bit more with him in his
absolutely. Yeah, and I think that actually...
And then it jumps straight to, like, by Ebenezer or whatever it was. I thought, hang on, there was no in between. Why did they remove that?
It's a bizarre one, because it was Love Is Gone was in the original cut, but then Disney decided it was a bit too grown up for kids and a bit too slow. So they forced Brian Henson, who was very reluctant to have it removed, but agreed eventually to have it removed from the movie. But bizarrely, it was included on the VHS copy. So Bethan, who has seen it, my wife, who's seen this a million and one times, she was like, where's the song? Where's the fucking song? Because it was on the VHS, which is what she grew up with, but they lost the master. So it was not on any of the subsequent DVDs or Blu-rays. So the only place you could find this song was on the VHS. But then I think it was very, very recently, when they were doing the 4K restoration, they finally found the original of that song. So it's being recut into so if you watch the 4K version of this film, it's going to have Love Is Gone. And it's strange because even later in the film, when you basically, as it leads into the final credits, they all sing a song. It's a bit of a medley, but they're fundamentally singing Love Is Found. And obviously it's a callback to Love Is Gone. And you're watching the film and you're hearing this song, you're like, well, what's this little bit of a song and Love Is Found? And thematically, it means that song at the end doesn't really work. And again, tonally and in terms of character development, it means that the whole Ebenezer Scrooge going from evil to good feels totally rushed. And I think it comes down to that song being removed.
No, that actually sounds plausible, because like I said, he just seemed to, she dropped 100%. Him back, then he went in and he's really happy with Hagrid. And he's there in the street and he's doing his little dad chicken dance thing while they're all singing. And I'm doing that at my niece's wedding, by the way.
100%. Well, we can talk about Michael Caine in a minute, but I mean, the difference is with a lot, and you know, I've mentioned here the fact that outside of maybe the songs, that this isn't the best. It doesn't do anything better than maybe where it's been done previously. Is the Michael Caine thing where he doesn't seem to have that arc. And I'm not going to just blame that song. It's you think back to other interpretations, and he has those moments of realization throughout. He's not just bar humbug throughout. but it's like, you know, he has a little bit of realization, but then something turns, you know, even if we're doing the Bill Murray version, he softens, but then suddenly he hardens again.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, you know, I'm not going to let these ghosts tell me what's going on. And, you know, he becomes tough and the exterior comes back again. And he kind of goes on that journey, those ups and downs. Whereas absolutely what you said, and I think it is an issue with this film, is he's Ebenezer Scrooge. They do the song, you know, he has that great scene about them being unemployed and they do the hula dance. But as soon as the ghosts show up, he starts softening almost immediately and doesn't really, it's just a constant softening of his character right up until the end of the film when it's all sunshine and lollipops. But maybe that is the price we have to pay for this being a Disney film, you know, even though it wasn't a Disney film back in 1991, you know what I mean? A Henson production, should we say.
One thing I've always wanted to ask, right, with the whole Christmas Carol things, is his name Tiny Tim on his birth certificate? Because his parents call him Tiny Tim.
Yeah, it's quite odd, isn't it?
Like my
it's
parents,
like, is that his actual name?
Yeah, my parents would never call me my nickname.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Like I don't understand how like tiny that's got to be bad for that kid. Oh, you're small. We're going to call you Tiny Tim. Like is that on his birth certificate?
It's going to give you I assume not, but then like you said, it'll give you a complex. Like especially, you know, I'm not sure. Is he officially disabled or is he just suffering from malnutrition? I don't. Or is he just ill? I don't know what the score is. But, you know, he's obviously the runt of the litter. And when everyone just keeps calling you Tiny Tim, like, dude, fucking give it a break, man. Yeah. Give me a complex.
You want to talk the litter? The kids of a pig and a frog should be some weird, deformed, mutant things, right?
Yes, but we're all glad they're not.
And the boys shouldn't be frogs.
Yeah, but I mean, we don't want to live in that world, do we? Jesus Christ. This half pig frog mutant. I guess if you wanted to do it a cute way, you could almost do it in a kind of like Pokemon style way. They kind of combine things and make something cute. But I got a funny feeling you haven't got a cute thing in your head. You're thinking more of some kind of horrendous monstrosity.
In seeing the Ghost of Christmas Past, I'm thinking they could have just gone all out and fucking gone full on horror on this. Like when
got like full go full Cronenbergian on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's like, maybe they have like 4 kids. You don't. You got like little Timmy. You have the 2 daughters, and then like Steve, the 4th child, who kind of crawls out. He's like, "Please let me die." It's like,
what do you think they're cooking on the spit? Because
no,
yeah, they're cooking
the one that got away. Jesus Christ!
While we're still
the one that didn't get away, I suppose.
While we're still in the Tiny Tim house, when you look at Tiny Tim and you see his eyes, they're all bright, and you got the just the pupils, the circles. That's fine. And then you look at Kermit, who's playing Bob Cratchit, and he's got these weird. And I know he probably has these all the time, but for some reason in this film, he's got the circles, but then 2 slits either side of his pupils. Dude looks constantly stoned.
He does look a bit stoned. I mean, you know, considering the time he was created, it probably, you know, I can imagine the creator was quite stoned as well, to be honest. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe because you don't have that same kind of love for the Muppets.
Yeah, I've never been a Muppets fan.
Again, it's like, you know, a big part of it is a nostalgia thing where it's like I'm never paying attention to the details of Kermit because he's just been in my life. It's kind of like the same way, you know, I think of Kermit in the same way that I think of like Mickey Mouse. It's just part of my life. So it's but I see what you mean. Like if you come to it with fresh eyes.
I'm not a Muppets fan, but I do have a favorite Muppet.
Okay, go for it.
Go on. Well, you tell me. This will be telling. Who would be my favorite Muppet?
Your favorite Muppet? Is it one that isn't in this film?
No, he is in this film, but barely, and I was upset about it.
Barely? Is that a hint?
It's not a bear.
It's not Fuzzy. Fozzie, sorry. I'm not sure then. Miss Piggy? Oh, Animal. Yeah, he really is in it, barely.
Yeah. See, Animal it's weird. Is my favorite Muppet. I love Animal.
Oh yeah, he just comes in and tells everyone to shut up, doesn't he? And that's his shtick. Which again is
what I love about Animal is he gets bored. Which, like, he's playing the nice song, and you can see it in his Muppet face. He's like, "This is shit," and all of a sudden he just goes, and I love Animal.
Oh yeah, I mean he's great, but again, I think it's just that wise choice of he has this little cameo, but they don't force him into the story. I don't think he would fit the narrative. And the fact that, you know, you still have that cool little nod, and even bigger characters I mentioned there, like Fozzie Bear, he's hardly in it. Yeah. He just comes in, does his little piece, because the emphasis is always on the narrative. It's always on the retelling of the story. Yeah. And again, I think that's why this is totally timeless. And it was actually, it was Disney, because Disney wanted Brian Henson to make this funnier. Like they saw the cuts of this film and they said the big issue was it wasn't funny enough. And thank God Brian Henson pushed back, because that's what I think makes this a timeless classic. In the same way that A Christmas Carol is a timeless classic.
Yeah, you can force jokes into something and then all of a sudden it becomes shit. What I do like about this is the jokes that they've got in there. Mm-hmm. They land. They constantly land. Like I said, I found myself laughing at a rat and an alien lighting a lantern. I was in stitches. I even laughed when he brought in the Rizzicle. The Rizzle popsicle and just smashed it against the thing. And like all the things that they were doing. And the voice work on those two really, really push it overboard. And because of those two, it extends my score at the end of this because without them, I wouldn't have liked this film. And I'm honest, I wouldn't have liked this film without those two.
See, I find it interesting because I almost feel like it's hard not to like, because I love A Christmas Carol. I just love the fundamental tale, and I almost think it's hard to do it a disservice. Like if you do a relatively respectful interpretation of the source material, I'm almost certainly going to like it. And I think for the most part, this film does just that. But to bring it back to your favorite thing about it, that's what really does set it aside. I mean, it's easy to say, oh, well, this has Muppets in it. But for the most part, they're integrated in with the other humans. Like, they, again, and I spoke earlier about like this film making a whole bunch of just tiny, correct choices. It's kind of human to Muppet ratio is perfect. It's like you never question it. When people are walking around, you have that great introductory sequence where you have obviously the buildings of Victorian. I keep saying it is Victorian London, isn't it?
Victorian London.
Yeah. Victorian London, and it's sweet, and it's like absolutely gorgeous, and it swoops down, and you see everybody going about their business, and goes straight into that first song. Is that you have humans just kind of swanning about with Muppets, and you never question it. You're like, yeah, I absolutely buy into this world.
In this world, but again, in this world, are humans eating singing vegetables?
Yeah, that is the more you think about that, the more disturbing it gets.
Yeah,
the only thing which doesn't really have a character
party, doesn't it?
It does become sausage party a little bit, yeah. So I was just like, so even the cabbages, I was like, well, they're kind of singing, but do we eat them? I'm not sure how comfortable I would be.
Speaking of food, my wife,
you can't even be a vegetarian.
My wife, when the Swedish chef showed Rizzo and Gonzo, and he opened the hurdy-gurdy and he lifted the colossus. Right?
Yeah.
My wife goes, why is he serving hemorrhoids?
It's pretty well. It's bizarre because all I remember thinking, like when I was watching that sequence again, is that I forgot that his arms are just human arms.
Yeah,
and I was like, oh, that's kind of creepy as well. I'd never really, I don't know, I just never really clocked to it before. But I was watching that sequence, and I'm not sure about these human arms going around. But we all had an issue with the hurdy-durdy. What's his name? The chef,
Swedish chef. But is
it just Swedish? Is it literally just Swedish chef?
He is Swedish chef, and all he talks is hurdy-gurdy.
Fantastic.
Hurdy-gurdy, hurdy-gurdy. Which
Brilliant.
Cannot be politically correct this day and age.
You can get away with it because it's the Nordic nations. You can totally make fun. There are just certain nations, like their lives are so good that you're like, oh, we can go after the Nordic nations. You know, it might be different if you were, say, Finnish and you were taking the piss out of the Norwegians. Yeah. But when we're just kind of vaguely taking the piss out of just Scandinavia, I feel like it's just one of those things you're allowed to, in the same way we're allowed to take the piss out of the French. If that character is, say, I don't know, African, no, that doesn't fucking fly anymore. But, luckily he's Swedish, so it's fine.
It's fine. It's fine for him to serve singing hemorrhoids.
I love the idea that I'm saying that. There could be someone from Sweden listening going, no, it's not fucking fine. We find that incredibly racist.
You are so getting cancelled. Next week, I'm doing this podcast on my own.
Who has ever got cancelled by Sweden? I'm not sure if that happens. Oh, Jesus Christ. I don't want to be the first one. Before we move on, I've got to ask a few. I mean, first, we mentioned a few times Rizzo the Rat. I feel like Brad Pitt has stolen a trick from him in so much that he is constantly eating in this film. Yes. And I refuse to believe that Brad Pitt hasn't seen Rizzo the Rat in The Muppet Christmas Carol and gone, that works. I'm going to go with that. So that does work. One thing I'm not sure does work at all is Michael Caine's Scrooge has a gold tooth. Now, something I'd never noticed, despite the fact that the camera really zooms in on it, it doesn't exactly scream austerity, does it? It feels so out of character for Ebenezer Scrooge to have a gold tooth that I was like, I don't know why it's been added. Like, don't get me wrong, there might be someone who said, oh, well, there's been 17 Ebenezer Scrooges on screen who all had a gold tooth. I've never noticed it. I think it's weird as fuck.
Yeah, the other thing I didn't get with Michael Caine, well, I mean, I thought he was way too tall compared to the Muppets. Because Michael Caine's a tall guy anyway.
Is he that tall?
Well, yeah, he's 6 foot something, isn't he?
I don't know. I think he's just taller than Muppets, but I think that's going to be the problem with most humans, I suppose.
But I questioned a scene, right?
Mm-hmm.
When he was in his office on Christmas Eve with Bob Cratchit and the 100 Rizzos, because they all just sounded the same.
Mm-hmm.
He gave them a list of eviction notices. And he's happy to do it. And apparently they do it every day. They just evict people. How is the dude making his money if he's just kicking people out on the street all the time?
Yeah, I guess, if he evicts someone, he can bring someone else into the housing and then get their money and blah, blah, blah. I'm not sure. It's basically, he's getting money. He's not getting money from evicting them. Basically, he's saying, like, there are tough times. These people aren't paying their rent. So he's like, if you're not paying, I've got no time for you. So you're evicted, and I'll get in someone who can pay. Yeah, so I think that's his shtick.
But he's not going to be able to keep getting people in. At some point, he's going to have run the well dry.
This is central London, surely. But no, there were a lot of eviction notices, which certainly just times are pretty tough back then. But I'm not sure if it's the best business model. But then I think he's just a crotchety old bastard. That's
Although to be fair, when he turned his life around and he gave his staff presents, he did give them lumps of coal.
He did, yeah. Which, again, I mean, I get it for the film thematically. It makes sense because they wanted coal because they were all cold. But also, does he realize that getting a lump of coal for Christmas isn't ideal for most people? I'm not sure if they thought that out. But
lumps of coal.
It brings us back to the whole Michael Caine thing. I can't decide how much I liked him in this film, and I think it's because he's maybe not either side of the Michael Caine spectrum in this film. Like, basically, when I think of Michael Caine, there's like two versions. He's the opposite of Al Pacino, who was like much more quieter and reserved, then suddenly became much bigger and bigger. And like early in his career, I kind of associate him with, you're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off.
Yeah.
And then later in his career, it was like the Batman one, and it became much quieter. I'm trying to think of it was a diamond the size of a tangerine, Master Bruce. That kind of stuff. Yeah. And in this, he's not quite kind of at either end of the spectrum. He's not interesting as interesting as he became later in his career, and he's not as bombastic as he was earlier in his career. And it makes he's totally fine in this. And I think maybe it comes down to what you mentioned earlier, the fact that his he doesn't have the most interesting character arc. I mean, we know what the character arc is going to be. This is A Christmas Carol. But getting there is a relatively smooth affair, I suppose. And maybe that kind of makes him a less interesting interpretation of the character. But he's not my favorite Ebenezer Scrooge by any stretch of the imagination. He just kind of, like a lot of this film, he's fine. But yeah. I didn't think he was brilliant, and especially if we're going to compare him to, say, our favorite one, which in many respects is Bill Murray, where, he's really going for it in that film. Like, a big reason for that movie working is Bill Murray swinging for the fences. I don't feel like at times it doesn't feel like he's necessarily even that committed. Like, he's just like, he's just doing a job and that's it.
When you think of Michael Caine, you don't think of many of his 90s stuff. I think that's the problem. He kind of disappeared in the 90s. Because before this, right, 1988, he did Dirty Rotten Scoundrels.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Then he did a TV movie in 1990, Jekyll and Hyde. Something called Shock to the System in 1990. Mr. Destiny, which I actually like. That's the one where he sends Jim Belushi back in time.
Yeah, I know the one, yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't mind that one. Then something
not all classics, though. Let's be clear.
No. This is what I mean. Then something called Bullseye, then Noises Off, then Blue Ice, and then he did Christmas Carol, and then he went straight from that to do On Deadly Ground with Steven Seagal.
Well, that's the thing with Michael Caine. He's always been very honest about some films he just does for a paycheck. I think it was, is it Jaws 3D he was in back in the day?
Yeah.
He said very clearly, he was like, that film was terrible, but he was like, it paid really well, so I took the job.
But this is what I'm saying.
When I watch this film, it feels like a paying gig.
His 90s are terrible. Like honestly, when you think of any actor, you never quite, except for a Muppet Christmas Carol, maybe On Deadly Ground if you're that kind of person.
Mhm.
You're not going to name, and I guarantee you're not going to name another 90s Michael Caine film.
No, he's one of those guys, kind of like, and a lot of these actors have this. Like Sean Connery had an era of it as well, where they still get these parts because everyone knows who Michael Caine is.
Yeah.
Everyone knew who like Sean Connery was. But yeah, he wasn't getting those leading parts anymore. And even, Robert De Niro and Al Pacino, these great actors, obviously he's a little bit older, but from the 70s, the 80s and stuff, they get to a certain age where they're like, all right, I'm gonna cash in my checks here, cash in my chips. Is that the term? Yeah, cash in my chips. Where he's like, I'm famous and stuff, and I'm just gonna start taking, my legacy is assured. I'm just gonna start taking some paid gigs. And it's happened to all of them. And the 90s feels like the decade when Michael Caine was like, I'm just going to get paid this decade. I'm going to do whatever movies. And it was, he's had his second part of his career, like I guess many of us think of as the Nolan years.
Yeah.
But this was very much in his 90s. And he's fine in this, but there is an element of it feeling slightly phoned into me.
He is phoning it in.
A little bit. He's not bad. I won't go, he's still Michael Caine. He's a good actor.
Yeah. He's
fine in this, but it's not the most inspired take on the character by any stretch.
Did movie continuity upset you a little bit in this?
No, but it might do now if you explain it.
Right. Bob Cratchit's asking for the day off.
Mm-hmm.
He says, Scrooge says, come in at 8:30. He said, well, no, everything's closed. You'll have nobody to do business with. So, all right, then, you have the day off. Okay, that's fine. So, they've got the day off now because they've explained to Scrooge that because it's Christmas Day, all of the businesses are going to be closed.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the film, the kid is able to buy the turkey from the butcher. That business is open then, is it? Michael Caine, Scrooge, is then able to go into other shops while singing his Happy-Go-Lucky song and buy presents for everyone else. So those businesses are open.
I wonder if when he means business, he means more from a financial sense.
Why are those shops open on Christmas Day?
Well,
have you ever gone to a butcher's on Christmas Day?
I haven't, admittedly. No, I guess
I've gone to buy a last minute. The only thing I've ever been able to buy on Christmas Day when I was growing up was a newspaper from the corner shop.
Yeah, but I guess we are going based on the rules of when was Christmas Carol written? Like 1850, like 1840, something along those times?
No, they said everything was closed and then everything was open for him. Like, that's not right.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. I'm trying to make the argument that when he says the businesses are closed, that he means, as I said, more financial businesses. And then you were making the argument subsequently, it was like, oh, well, those, no shops are ever open on Christmas Day when I go out on Christmas Day. But, your everyday businesses, your foods and your whatnot, could have been open back in the mid-19th century.
No.
He's not having it. He's not having it. Well, that takes us in perfectly to loves and hates, because this could very easily make your top three of hates.
I just wanted to make... Sorry, I know it takes...
No, go for it.
Loves and hates, but I had one more question, right?
Mm-hmm.
What was I going to say? Yeah, okay. So, and I've always thought of this on all of the Christmas Carol stories.
Mm-hmm.
He is now, and it was more predominant with this film, with this rewatching. He is now a better man. He went around. He splashed the cash. He was buying things for everything. He was just
coal. Now that you mentioned coal, I'm like, it's a terrible gift. Yeah, it's like Carol.
He's just money. Like he is now just dripping money. He's raising Bob Cratchit's salary. He's doing everything. He's paying off his mortgage.
So he's making it rain, basically.
Yeah. So now he's happy, but skint. So is that
well,
the ghost
no,
plan?
I don't know if he's skint.
But if he's doing this every year now until he's alive, until he dies, he's going to be fucking skint.
I think that's the point. Is outside of obviously the very flashy gold tooth, is that because of his own personal austerity and the way he treats people, is that he probably has great wealth. Like he can live so far beyond his means, but he's. Let's be clear. He's in his and I know this is me 30 years ago. And I think the character is supposed to be kind of like 60, 70. And we're talking, mid 19th century Victorian England. I'm guessing he's got like 10 years left on average, should we say. So I think he can totally afford to pay his staff slightly better and be a little bit exuberant at Christmas. I think financially he's going to be absolutely fine. And I think more importantly is, he doesn't have to worry because he doesn't have to leave anything behind other than his brother. It is his brother, his nephew. Sorry,
Yeah.
he doesn't have any family. So he's like, where's the money going to go? You just blow it. I think he's got more than enough money to be a kind old man for the next 10, 15 years. I think he's going to be okay.
Bah humbug. Save your fucking money.
See, that's the thing now. It's amazing how two different approaches. I'm so defensive of the source material and of the movie itself because I do legitimately love this movie. I know I've kind of given away the score, but I am a big fan of this movie and of the source material.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, we do it all the time, mind. You've said it many times. I seem to fixate on something within these films that nobody else would think about.
Oh, no one else. It was, when you were like, oh my God, is he going to ruin A Christmas Carol for me? And then you say it, I'm like, nah, I'm fine.
Yeah,
I'm fine. This is just Rob being Rob. In the same way that you didn't ruin Point Break by going on about him buying fucking hoagies or whatever it was.
Oh, fucking hell. It doesn't take... You don't get food that quick. Don't get me started on Point Break.
Yeah, we can't get you started on that. It'll be a whole nother podcast. If you want to know about the whole hoagie issue, you can go back and listen to, I don't know, episode 67, Point Break, whatever the hell it is. God knows what the number is.
No.
Are we cool with the movie then? Should we move on to Loves and Hates?
Let's do Loves and Hates,
Cool. In terms of loves, I've mentioned it a couple of times, the tradition and reverence and sweetness over cheap laughs. It's like, we mentioned earlier that the laughs are there and they're funny, but there's no kind of needless input of constantly cheap jokes throughout this film. It's like it always puts the story first, and that's why I think it stands test on why it's still brilliant to this day. The integration of the Muppets into the world a la Roger Rabbit, although it's probably even more natural. Roger Rabbit, another film we really need to do in this podcast.
How have we not done Roger Rabbit? Nearly 90
I know, it's absolutely insane. We're nearly 100 podcasts. We haven't done Roger Rabbit, so we'll have to do that soon. But just the way that you don't question the world, you just accept it as it is. The songs are both very good. And you mentioned it yourself, not overly done. They don't, again, like the jokes, there are songs in this film and they're mostly very good, but they don't keep throwing them in your face. They always seem to pop up at just the right time, basically. And, as I said, it's a movie of perfect balance, just a ton of correct, tiny decisions, basically. And I'm going to stick in one more, the structure and framing, coming back to Rizzo and Gonzo. I think that's what fundamentally both makes this film unique and makes the traditional structure work. So, yeah, love that as well.
Cool. My number one is Gonzo and Rizzo together. I thought they were fantastic.
Yeah,
they're absolutely great. They were the ones that, I wouldn't say saved the movie for me, but they were the ones that made me enjoy it more.
Yeah.
No, I was a huge fan of those two together. I actually liked Hagrid as well. I think he's really good in this.
I think he's really hard to do the Ghost of Christmas Present. I think a lot of films don't do him very well. I think he's really good in this.
What I really liked about it was, Michael Caine says, you're a little absent-minded spirit. And that joke about I'm a large absent-minded spirit I thought was really good. But the narrative of, my mind is only on the present. So soon as something goes, I don't remember it. So that whole narrative of this is the present, this is why I've said it 4 times or whatever. And that's just a subtle nod to it. So I really liked that delivery. I really liked that whole arc of the whole Christmas present thing, minus one of my hates, which is the whole Cratchit household. And then
the whole Cratchit household. Fucking idiots.
Lastly, I don't know. I like the overall structure, like you said, the overall structure of it. The framing of those two as well, Gonzo and Rizzo. The subtle jokes, the subtle nods to things. Even for a kids' film, things weren't forced down your throats. Lessons learned weren't forced down your throats. Things like that.
Yeah,
so I thought it was really good.
100%.
And to squeeze in a fourth, we didn't really mention it. I quite like the scene. Because we didn't really talk about the Ghosts of Yet to Come much. I quite liked the scene where they were talking about it's a bit morbid why I say I like it. They're all around, what have you got me from his house? Oh, you got me his blankets. Oh, they're still warm. And things like this. And it's just then when you get that realization that they're talking about him, that's delivered quite, and you know the story of A Christmas Carol. Of course they're talking about it.
I think because you know the story so well, there were points where it's come on, dude, you must know it's you by now.
What I like is the fact that Joe, the guy buying all this, is meant to be the creepy one. He's the spider. He's creepy, horrible. But then you look at the Ghost of Christmas Past and you realise, dude, you're nothing compared to that fucking horror.
Absolutely not. Absolutely. Like, yeah, he is supposed to be the creepy one, but we all know who the real creepy one is, and it's the Ghost of Christmas Past. So creepy. Which brings us directly into hates. And yes, number one, with a bullet, the Ghost of Christmas Past. Absolutely. Like that horrible sense of both the uncanny valley, somehow looking like a poached egg. Now you've mentioned it, I can't escape that. Very creepy, but for all the wrong reasons. The fact that there's no Pepe the King Prawn. Now, Pepe the King Prawn has basically replaced Rizzo in the Muppets because I think there was a bit of a falling out with the voice actor who did Rizzo. Okay. So I don't want Rizzo replaced with Pepe the King Prawn because he's basically Gonzo's new buddy now.
I don't know who this Pepe is. So.
Oh, dude, you should watch some clips of Pepe the King Prawn. He might be my favorite Muppet in fairness, and obviously he wasn't around in time for this. But number three, while the limited use of Kermit and Miss Piggy are fundamentally a good thing for this film, I still think, despite what you think, a bit more Kermit never harms. So I've got that down as a third, but I actually think that's both a positive and a negative. But one thing that definitely I don't like is Bless Us All, the song, and dare I say, Tiny Tim himself. I don't like him, and that's the only song in this film that I'm not a fan of. So, Tiny Tim, sadly, you can go fuck yourself.
Same as you.
Not very Christmassy of me, admittedly.
Same as you, floating poach egg. Not a 100%.
100%.
Secondly, I've already said it, the Cratchit household. Like, that whole scene.
I mean, that actually makes me feel better about my Tiny Tim. It is Tiny Tim. I keep calling him Little Tom or some shit. Tiny Tim. My tirade against him doesn't seem nearly as bad when you're like, oh no, the whole Cratchit household, they're freak fucking kids. The fact that they're so poor, it just makes me sick.
I never once said about them being poor, but
that's what you're implying quite clearly.
I know you say it, yeah. Fucking hell, spit down at them. But no,
if there's one thing Rob hates, it is poor people.
Fuck you! You hate Sweden.
Well, we've all have our crosses to bear, Rob. Yeah. Jesus Christ!
Oh my God, we're getting cancelled. No, I wasn't a fan of that whole Cratchit household scene. Like, it just seemed, I don't know. It took you out of the film. It was pointless. It was stupid. It was
pointless. I think that's a bit harsh. I think it was probably quite important to the overall narrative, but sure.
Yeah. No, not a fan.
Not a fan
of it. It could have been done so much better. And like you, the lack of animal in this film. Don't get me wrong. He does not need to be in this film.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Nowhere for him in this film except for the party scene, which I totally get. But if the only Muppet I like isn't in a Muppets Christmas Carol much, then I'm not going to like it. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah.
I get it. Yeah, I think it's the same thing as I said with the Kermit and Miss Piggy thing. It's like, I always think, oh, well, this is a Muppets film. It needs more Kermit. It needs more Miss Piggy. But then when I watch the film, I'm like, but it's fundamentally the correct choice for the film. So, similarly to yourself, I'm a little bit kind of torn on that, where I'm like, it's both right and wrong. So, there are no winners there, sadly. In terms of favorite scene, it probably is the Feels Like Christmas song. I like that song really is the kind of, I think most people, I'm sure, like, based on nostalgia, everyone has their own favorite song, but that's probably the most famous song out of this film. And, it's the one that after I watch this film, it's the one that's always in my head. It's the one I'm always singing after I watch this film. That and the opening sequence, which I already mentioned, like that opening shot where you're above the city and then it kind of shoots down, like straight away, it really sets the tone perfectly for what this film is. So whether it be, so basically I'm choosing two. I'm going for Feels Like Christmas and the opening sequence. They're mine.
My favorite scene, and it's
Animal.
No, not Animals. No, I said it like 4 times in this episode already. Like the lamb, not the rat. Like the lamb, not the rat.
That is pretty cool. That is pretty, like anything with Rizzo and Gonzo is pretty good.
Oh, well. The other one as well, where he's making Rizzo climb the gate, and he's left his jelly beans on the other side of the gate, so just walks through, and he's just looking at him. Gonzo's looking at him, going, "You can fit through those bars? Yeah, why?" Yeah, like
I'm genuinely concerned now because you're speaking about the film like so positively in many respects. If we get to the end of this podcast and you give this film a fucking 2, I'm going to be furious. I'm going to be furious. So facts. Facts. This is your section, sir.
Hang on,
again, this is another one where we're going to have to be slightly selective because this is one of those films which is totally beloved. What comes with a beloved film are facts. There are tons and tons of facts. So I guess it's just a matter of just picking some of the best ones, basically.
So before production began, Michael Caine told producer and director Brian Henson, "I'm going to play this movie like I'm working with the Royal Shakespeare Company. I will never wink. I will never do anything Muppety. I am going to play Scrooge as if it is an utterly dramatic role and there are no Muppets around me." Henson replied, "Yes, bang on." And yeah, that's what he delivers, to be fair.
That's exactly what he delivers. And that is why this film works as well as it does. Like you said, don't have those cheap laughs. Don't wink or nod to the source material. And plus, this is only coming, again, in terms of time frame, this is only a few years after Scrooged with Bill Murray, a film which did go completely the opposite way, which I think in its own way nailed the tone perfectly. But they did a traditional retelling of the story, which just happens to star Muppets, and it's fantastic.
This is quite. This spits on what we said about Michael Caine phoning it in.
Oh dear.
Michael Caine considers the role of Scrooge to be one of his most memorable to him.
Ooh.
Yeah, and where they're going to, you could have done better.
I feel like that's maybe one of those things people are going to totally disagree with us on. As I said, he's good in this film. He's fine. I just don't find him one of the most memorable kind of thing. It's okay.
Oh, now we were right with our poached egg. The Ghost of Christmas Past effects were created by making a special Muppet that was operated in a tank of water and then green screened into the movie to make it look like it was floating.
It's movie poached egg for sure.
So they basically just poached it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that is the thing. For 1992, the effects of that ghost are actually objectively and technically quite impressive, but it's just horrible. It's in the same way. Remember, we had the same conversation about pretty much the entirety of the Super Mario Brothers movie, where if you kind of removed yourself from how much you hated it, you're like, this is a technically impressive looking film, and the sets were absolutely amazing. The problem was they were fucking horrible. They were horrible to look at. Yes, technically brilliant, but visually horrible, just like The Ghost of Christmas Past. But it's another one of those features that probably goes under the radar of. And the reason that this is, again, another reason why it stood the test of time and why it's still so beloved is that for a film from 1992, it looks utterly timeless. This looks, for the most part, like it could have been made last year.
Yeah.
That's why it's still great, especially if you've got, like, if you watch it on Disney Plus, it's a really clean cut. Obviously, you're not getting that additional song, but it still looks brilliant. Still looks fundamentally modern and old-fashioned.
This is quite funny, right? Kermit the Frog gave an interview and said the most important piece of acting advice ever given to him by Michael Caine was never blink.
That's pretty good, actually.
I knew you'd like
that. Just like Wednesday Addams.
Yeah. Haven't watched that yet.
Oh, dude, it's really good.
It is good, is it?
It's really good, yeah. Like, visually not as quite as interesting as I thought it was going to be, considering it was a Tim Burton film, it's the Addams Family.
Yeah.
But is it Jenna Ortega? Like, from the it's weird because the rest of the Addams, and sorry, I am sabotaging the podcast here. The rest of the Addams family aren't, I don't think, cast as well, but the only thing that really matters is her, because this is her show, and she knocks it out of the park. She's fantastic. So, right, back to facts.
The movie was originally planned to be a television special, so the fact that they put it in the cinema and it did as well, and like you've said it a couple of times, it maybe not for me, but it's beloved and it's classic, and
well, it needed the budget as well, and I think as I mentioned in the intro that this was a big risk because this was the first Muppets film after Jim Henson's death, and I think in a world, and it's happened to a few times to the Muppets over the decades, where people ask if the Muppets are still relevant. Do we need the Muppets in the world anymore? Do they still work? And it's they have their ups and downs, but they always seem to knock it out of the park just when they need to. There was the Muppets movie. God, it was probably close to like 10 years ago now, but that came out, and that was that was this kind of fantastic retelling of the Muppets where it kind of combined the traditional Muppets elements but made it more modern. And this is a different kind of film. But I think after Jim Henson dies, you're like, can the Muppets still be the Muppets?
Yeah.
And this is the first one that comes afterward, and you're like, yes, it absolutely can be.
This is one of the very few adaptations that show just how sick Tiny Tim was, as he coughed several times during the Cratchit Christmas dinner, implying he has whooping cough or pneumonia, which was quite common in Victorian times where the movie is.
Oh, there we go.
So I appreciate the whooping cough or pneumonia, but what's with the crutch? Is it just because he's tiny and he has a bad leg, or
just because he's tiny? Just like if you're that small, like I'm gonna buy one for my wife and be like, you are pretty small. Sick. You should probably have a walking stick.
They're saying he's sick.
No, I totally agree.
Yeah. So
Why has he got the?
Why is he
No,
got a crush?
that's what I mean. He asked a question earlier, and I'm sure there are answers out there, and I'm sure I should have done more research. But I'm like, is he suffering from a disability? I don't know, or is he just so ill that they gave him a crutch, or is he so small that he can't walk unaided? I don't know the answer to that, sadly. Which isn't the thing I'm supposed to say in the facts section. We are supposed to be delivering the facts, not I don't fucking know.
Just seeing if I can find any more that would be
that we haven't already covered, which we have a terrible tendency to do, of course.
Oh, absolutely. This is why I'm just diving through them now.
Come on, one more. We need one more. One more.
Gonzo is only referred to by name in dialogue once. Otherwise, he's referred to as Charles Dickens, Mr. Dickens, or Charles.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. It is right at the top, isn't it, where Rizzo keeps calling him Gonzo. He's like, no, I'm not Gonzo, I'm Charles Dickens.
We'll end it there. Hang on.
All right, cool.
No. Miss Piggy makes her first appearance 53 minutes into the film. I argue she didn't need to make her appearance at all.
She absolutely has to. She has to be in the movie. It would be distracting if Miss Piggy didn't make an appearance. And in fairness, she's hardly in it, and she's great in this. Her and her two daughters, all that nonsense. Like it just totally works. And if she was in it more, I agree, it would probably be too much, but. Again, it's a deft touch shown throughout.
We've talked about the Muppets, right? We've gone on about Muppets. We've gone on about Kermit and Miss Piggy. We need to have it on record, that joke, don't we? What's green and smells like pork?
Kermit's I don't know.
Kermit's
dude. We didn't need that on record at all. This is a goddamn Christmas podcast. What are you doing?
We got it now.
Oh, well, the legacy.
Is that a joke?
Yeah, it will be that joke, sadly. Obviously, Rob's going to disagree on quite a bit of this, but, I think for a lot of people, is this the best Christmas movie ever made? I don't think so, but it's in the conversation. I think if you're making a top 10 list of Christmas movies all time, and this isn't on there, I think it's seen as an oversight. I think, I'm not saying it has to be number one, but I think it's always in the conversation. In the same way, is this the best Christmas Carol adaptation? I'm not sure. I think it might be, amazingly, but regardless of what I think, it has to be in that kind of top 3 or 4, 100%. And you can say the same with the Muppet film. Is this the best Muppet movie? I think it probably is. You might not agree, but again, it's that good a film that it's in those kind of conversations. It's held in those kind of heady heights.
It probably is the best Muppet movie for me to agree to, because it's the only Muppet movie I've ever watched. So.
You should try the most recent one, not the sequel, because there was a sequel to it with Ricky Gervais, which wasn't very good. The one before, I think it was literally just called the. Oh, you don't like Ricky Gervais?
I hate the dude.
I like Ricky Gervais stand up. I'm not so sure about him on screen, but the one before it with the Flight of the Conchords guys, that one's actually really good, and I think you might actually like that film. Definitely don't watch the Ricky Gervais one, because I like Ricky Gervais and I don't think it's a good film. But the one before that is actually really good. What was I going to say? I mentioned the fact that it's the fact that again it's got that timeless nature to it, and the fact that it's become so beloved. I guess its legacy is that it will essentially live on forever. I think eventually, even something as great as Scrooge, like once, we have this kind of reverence and love for the 80s, but eventually that will start looking old. It'll start looking of its time rather than old in the more traditional sense. Like, the 1951 version, I think will always have its place because it's been classic for so long, I suppose.
Yeah.
Whereas this is almost like, Mariah Carey. This film will be defrosted at Christmas and rolled out for a month and a half.
and just Mariah Carey then?
Well, you know what I mean? Like, she's got that Christmas song.
Looking 30 years older.
Yeah, but no, that's what I mean. They'll just, like, the video is so cheesy and ridiculous. It doesn't matter that it was 30 years ago. That video will get played, that song will sell millions and millions of copies for years and years to come. In the same way that this film will be watched by generations of kids to come, because I think another 30, 40 years from now, this film will look exactly the same as it does now. Like, it just is it is the timeless nature of it, which means that if you show it to a kid 30 years from now, he's not going to look at it and go, oh, he or she, they're not going to look and go, oh, this looks old, in the same way that they might do with a black and white movie or, a lot of films from, say, the 70s and 80s. But they'll see this and they'll just be like, oh, it's just a Muppets film. That's it. And it'll look as great in 2052 as it did in 1992.
I kind of argue the fact that you think this would hold up more than, like, say, Scrooged and stuff. But I think that's probably just me being more nostalgic towards Scrooge than using my head in that regards, because I can understand where you're coming from with that, but I don't know. I'm not going to rush out and watch this film again next year.
Yeah, but that's the thing, though, because, like I said, you didn't grow up, and I totally understand that. Like, and we mentioned it earlier. There's the whole like personal nostalgia thing is really hard to remove for Christmas movies. I'm talking more on a technical level, in so much that this is even if it's not for you, I think objectively we can all agree it's a pretty decent retelling of A Christmas Carol.
Yeah,
and because of the way it's shot, it's got that Victorian setting, it's got physical effects. It's not going to, like, you know, if you showed a kid Scrooge now, there are so many trappings of it looking like an 80s film. It's still great, but it looks like an 80s film. A kid's not going to look at that and go, oh, well, that's a film from 1992. To a kid, they'd be like, he won't know when that's made. That could have been made last year, could have been made 10 years ago.
Totally agree. It's
and I think it'll be the same in years to come.
I was actually thinking, it kind of goes along the same lines as, do you remember that Chris Evans, Jason Statham film, Cellular, I think it was called?
I do. Now, I don't know where the fuck you're going with this, but this is going to be fun.
Well, whereas that definitely, and that was made in 2004, but you can't watch that film now. With the whole thing is based on a mobile phone. I thought you were just going to end it there. You can't watch that film now. It's terrible. Yes, it's terrible. The whole thing is based on a mobile phone. Like what he can do with his top of the range mobile phone.
I cannot believe that you've managed to get Cellular into the Christmas Carol
Tell
podcast.
me my point wasn't valid.
No, like jokes aside, it is 100% valid. There are a bunch of films where, you know, I think we mentioned before, like Hackers with Angelina Jolie. Like,
we got to do
which we absolutely have to on this podcast, which I have a lot of time for, and I have fond memories of that film. But that is a film that is 100% stuck in 1995. You show that to a kid now, they'll be like, what the fuck is happening? In the same way with like 80s film, like war games and stuff like that, anything to do with like computers, a lot of things to do with technology, they often don't age incredibly well.
I tried to show my niece.
Why did you pick Cellular? Of all the films you could have picked,
I tried to show my niece War Games, and
yeah, I mean, if you had said War Games, I could have gone on that journey. I was like, that was the first film you went to, Cellular, amazing.
She was totally out of it as soon as he picked up his landline and put it onto the modem. He was like, "I'm done. I'm done."
What the fuck is that? It's amazing, like how quickly a movie can be aged just by like somebody taking out a mobile phone, and it'll be like a flip phone or something. You're like, oh yeah, this is from 2004 or something.
Although they're coming back. I mean, mainly for drug dealers, but flip phones are coming back.
Yeah, so is the Nokia 3210. You know, the indestructible. Well, people have just found the ones that still exist. I don't know. In terms of score and soundtrack, we've mentioned, you know, a few things, but I mean, it is decent throughout. There is still that one banger, which I think is what you need. As good as the rest of the score is, you need that one absolute banger, because I think back to, you know, recent Disney films which haven't quite lived on in the memory, despite the fact that the films are really good. Like Frozen's a good film, but it had the banger, didn't it? And it's the one thing that Tangled, which I actually think is a better movie. It was released, I think, maybe a couple of years before Frozen, and it's one of my favorite Disney animated films. But it's arguably lacking that absolute banger. In the same way, the Princess and the Frog had a similar issue. Had a lot of decent songs, but it didn't have that banger, and people don't talk about that. A lot of
films I haven't watched.
Oh, fair enough. And you're the one with the kid, which is unbelievable.
Yeah, but my kid is 3, but also...
And he's a boy.
My kid is a boy.
Yeah. Oh, I love those films. And that is, I've noticed, like, as good as those films are, they're not talked about as much because they don't have those one or two absolute bangers. And this film, luckily, does have that absolute bangers. But the score itself, which I think is very good, it's by Miles Goodman, who also worked on Teen Wolf, funny enough, a film we have covered, and one we should cover, Little Shop of Horrors. And Paul Williams, slightly older stuff, for films I've not seen, Smokey and the Bandit and Battle for the Planet.
Smokey and the Bandit?
I've not seen Smokey and the Bandit.
And so, you're giving me shit for this?
Well, I was giving you shit for Cellular. I'm not sure I was giving you shit for you. Have seen this. I'm not sure if everybody, you know, who was born in the 80s has seen Smokey and the Bandit, but maybe that's one of those ones we should go back and watch. That could, I mean,
I'm not saying it's any good. I can't remember,
I should have
seen it.
I mean, Smokey and the Bandit, was that late 70s?
Yeah, 78, 77.
Yeah. My cinematic knowledge, like, it really drops off before the 80s. It's unbelievable.
Totally agree. I barely have gone back to 70s films as well.
Which I feel like I really need to start. I've seen a lot of the classics, and I'm going to go on record, despite having seen it. I'm not sure if Smokey and the Bandit is deemed a classic in the traditional sense, but, you know, I have a big gap in my cinematic knowledge. You know, 60s, 70s cinema. I'm slowly trying to resolve that, and maybe I need to start with Smokey and the Bandit. So we'll get there eventually.
Cannonball Run as well.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, as great as the songs are, and, you know, we've mentioned most of them at this point, it's a film probably as famous for the two songs that were recorded but never filmed as the ones that ultimately made it to the film. And most pressingly, though, it probably is the "When Love Is Gone" song. You know, we mentioned it earlier, the fact that it was in the movie for the VHS, but it wasn't at the cinema, and then it wasn't on the DVD. I can't think of any other movie where a song has had such a bizarre, you know, kind of relationship to the film. You have other musicals where, you know, I think of like The Lion King and stuff like that, where songs have been added in afterwards. But the fact that it was on the VHS, but it wasn't on in the cinema, and then because they lost the cut, it wasn't on the subsequent Blu-rays, or it's not on Disney Plus. But now it's coming back 30 years later. Quite the journey for that song. And it's actually, you know, it's not a fun song, but it's a sweet song. And as we mentioned earlier, it's probably quite important for the journey of Ebenezer Scrooge. And I think the movie loses something for, you know, not just because, the song's great. I think on a narrative level, the film loses something for him not being there. So I'm glad that it's back anyway. Anything to add, or should we move on to video games?
No, I'm good in regards to the music and the soundtrack. Like I said, the only one I can remember is the one you said the name for it, the one that Hagrid sings. That's the tune that I can remember. But in regards to anything else,
but that brings us back to my point, because I think you're again talking about Feels Like Christmas.
Yeah,
you've walked away and you remember that song because that is the belter. And it's so, you know, but like I said, this film does have the depth of song where if you go, obviously it's not going to happen to you based on what you've said, but if you go back and watch this the following year, you'll pick up another song, and suddenly you're like, all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, the whole soundtrack, other than Tiny Tim's Shite song, is an absolute belter. But the one that gets you in the door is definitely Feels Like Christmas.
Yeah, definitely. No, I'm good though. I'm intrigued to move on to video games. I'll tell you that.
Well, it's a little bit on the nose, but, you know, unsurprisingly, there's not been a video game based on the Muppet Christmas Carol. But I would go with like a Hatsune Miike style rhythm action game, you know, from Sega, you know, Japanese developer. Only you remove the Vocaloid Popstress and replace it with Muppets and maybe Michael Caine and Christmas songs. And Michael Caine, who is wonderfully terrible when it comes to his singing, you know, I would very much include that. But yeah, I think just, you know, an array of kind of Christmas songs, but with, you know, button presses in high scores and stuff. It's like, you know, I don't want to play an adventure game in this world. I just want to enjoy the songs. But also it's not musical.
You said a game, and you said developers. Then they rolled off your tongue like everyone who listens to this podcast knew what you were on about. I guarantee you, except for you, nobody knew what the fuck you said.
Okay, so Hatsune Miku, you don't know who that is?
Nope.
You don't know what a Japanese Vocaloid is?
Nope.
You know who Sega is?
Oh yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, basically, she's like a character that's been created, like visually. It's just like a CG character. But these songs are written by other people, but they're played through this Vocaloid program. Okay. So it's like the voice of a computer. It's a computer-generated singer. The singer doesn't exist. It's a computer algorithm, basically. And they apply it to this, you know, cute little-looking anime girl. And she's in a bunch of video games. I'm sure there's a bunch of cartoons and stuff like that. But they even do like live shows with like projections, what they call holograms and stuff like that. So yeah, Hatsune Miku is like incredibly famous in certain circles, huge in Japan. And there are tons and tons of video games of this ilk, which are often quite good because the songs are really catchy. Because again, it's a bunch of very talented people writing these pop songs, and they're all just sung by this program. Bless me, Jesus Christ, where'd that come from? They're all sung by this program and projected into this, you know, likable Hatsune Miku character. So
I didn't have.
I'm not sure if it's adorable or it's a sign of our dystopian future, but that's what I'm going to. But like I said, this game is removing Hatsune Miku. It's removing all the Vocaloid trappings, and it's just having fun little Christmas songs sung by Muppets and Michael Caine.
I didn't have an idea for a video game because I wouldn't know where it was going. Now you said that, one has popped into my mind, and I'm doubling down on it.
Go for it.
Parappa the Rapper style Muppets Christmas Carol.
Yeah, that's probably a better example in terms of tone, but that's fundamentally the same. Instead of like button presses, that was like, kick punch, wasn't it, and stuff like that with Parappa the Rapper. But yeah, we're fundamentally on the same page, so we'll go with that. But yeah, still not.
I just wanted to say Parappa the Rapper.
That sounds much better in a Cardiff accent. Parappa the Rapper, or just a Welsh one.
You're from Cardiff.
Yeah, but I've been living up in Scotland. The accent's been flattened out. As I tell myself, there's somebody listening going, "No, this guy sounds Cardiff as fuck."
Yeah,
as fuck, bro. Serious. I feel like maybe a really Welsh version of Parappa the Rapper would be quite fun, because it's just it's a fun thing to say in a really serious Welsh accent. I'm very much going for my Michael Sheen voice here and saying Parappa the Rapper. Or maybe that could be the movie adaptation. Michael Sheen as Parappa the Rapper. That would be fantastic.
You went more Brian Blessed.
I did. Yeah. Well, I was just going for that kind of Welsh grandeur, I suppose.
Yeah.
But right,
I'm not sure if
I stuck the landing, to be honest.
Should we get you out of this spiral and move on to...
this horror spiral. Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes, obviously, I would recommend this to just about anyone. It's a hugely likable and timeless Christmas tale. Score, I have gone back and forth on this. I'm going to say a 4, but it's a really strong 4. I'm not going to go for a 5. I do have a handful of issues, but it's a super strong 4. And I mean, I could probably recommend this film as confidently as any other film we've done on this podcast. I've given 5s out before, but that might be more of a personal thing. Whereas this, I mean, if you like Christmas, watch a Muppet's Christmas Carol. Or I keep going back and forth. I keep thinking it's a Muppet's Christmas Carol or the Muppet's Christmas Carol. I'm sure it's the Muppet's Christmas Carol.
It's the Muppet Christmas Carol.
The Muppets, so it's not even the Muppets Christmas Carol. So I've been fucking this up all over the place. So I'm sure whenever I've recommended this, they've been able to fill in the gaps and do the research.
I mean,
and get to the correct film.
That'd be fucking stupid if you can't find it on the Muppets Christmas.
Yeah. I mean, he said a Muppets Christmas Carol. I don't think this film exists. I don't know what the fuck he's talking about. I think he's just making up movies.
It's like telling somebody to watch the Transformers the movie. He put too many the's in this. I don't know if I can.
In fairness, though, you might actually end up watching a DVD that you bought from Tesco's. There might be the Transformers the movie, which isn't the one you're looking for, admittedly. This is the more important one, though. I mean, would you recommend this? Watch a Score.
I don't know if I would recommend it. I mean, it's not something that I would just go around to people for Christmas going, "Oh, watch this film." I think there's better Christmas films. But the problem is, when I class something as a Christmas film, you think of things like Home Alone, Christmas Vacation, Scrooged. Like, I would never say a Muppet's Christmas Carol to me is a Christmas film, which is random as fuck because it is a Christmas film. So
it's probably more Christmassy. It's super Christmassy.
Yeah. I'm not denying that in the slightest. But I'm wondering if I would go around nominating the 2 others, and I can't.
Yeah, but that comes back to that initial thing, though. It's what you consider. Like, obviously, objectively this is a Christmas film.
Yeah.
But it's what you consider a Christmas film, because we all have this like collection of, say, 5 or 6 films where we're like, "Oh, at Christmas, I watch these." And obviously this has never been on your list, and it's unlikely that's going to change in your, 39th year. But yeah.
I'm really intrigued now, because I'll give you my score in a sec, but you said you have this list of films you watch at Christmas films, and you said it's about 4 or 5 of them. Dan Goldsworthy, at Christmas, he watches Terminator and Terminator 2. I'd love to see the other 3 films on his Christmas.
Yeah, like A Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Schindler's List.
Yeah.
What the fuck, Dan? Yeah, I mean, my list of like 5 Christmas films, and sorry, we will get to your score, really kind of stretching this out now, are probably the same as yours for the most part. Like, they are like, like Home Alone, Gremlins, Scrooged, Christmas Vacation. Which, again, how the fuck haven't we done Christmas Vacation? That seems absolutely bonkers. Well, it's an excuse for us to do at least another year of this podcasting thing, so we can do that. But I probably the only one, you would probably have Santa's Sleigh, and I would have Muppet's Christmas Carol. And I'm not going to lie, time has judged accordingly, sir. Yeah. I think I've won on that one.
I don't know. I mean, we could send a poll out again, and you probably would win on this one, but
I think history is on my side in the Santa Sleigh versus a Muppet's Christmas
Carol.
Although
historically, when we've sent out polls, you've always lost.
I've always lost. Jesus Christ. Who are our listeners? Lunatics. God damn it, lunatics.
Right. In regards to my score, I said Gonzo and Rizzo saved this for me in regards to added. So it's a 3.
I would be legitimately disappointed if you gave it anything. I mean, I kind of thought it was going to go in that direction, but I was like, I was like, objectively, I can't be lower than a 3. It's just such a well-made film. But yeah, I can understand that if you don't have the nostalgia attached to it. When I say understand, just about.
I'm still going to judge you, but I understand.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's been a Muppet's Christmas Carol, or the Muppet's Christmas Carol.
The Muppet's Christmas Carol. Yeah. It's going to be an interesting one next week because usually it's my choice, but in regards to choices, because the film that I picked for Christmas technically isn't a Christmas film, so we're going to release it after. So we're changing it on its head, which means we're double downing on your choices for Christmas. So
yeah. So
your choice next year.
It's a very traditional Christmas movie in its own way, I suppose, but tonally very different this one. So we're going to go for a Bad Santa next week. So we thought we'd mix things up. We can't go for lovey-dovey family fun every single day of the week. But this is a movie, talking about how difficult it is for modern Christmas movies to kind of find their way into our Christmas playlist because we're so set in stone because we have so much nostalgia attached. This absolutely did. And, this is quite a few years old now, in the grand scheme of things. But this came out when I was in my, late 20s probably. What was the year of Bad Santa?
2003, you would have been 21.
Yeah, 21. So, but this absolutely has been on.
19 years old, this film.
That is... Oh, God, see, I knew there was a reason I didn't look at the date. It was only going to upset me. Yeah. But this is one of those films that has absolutely made it onto the modern playlist. And I think it's because growing up, maybe there weren't any Christmas movies like this. But I suspect you might like this quite a bit more than the Muppet Christmas
I've
Carol.
seen it more than once, I'll give you that. I am a fan of Bad Santa. But I haven't seen it for about, 10 years maybe.
In fairness, I don't think I've seen it for at least 5 or 6 years. So there is always the question, has it held up? And, as much as, I enjoy this film, I probably watched it 4 or 5 times. And as said, not for a good 5 or 6 years. So we'll see. But just make sure you don't make the mistake of watching the sequel. Jesus Christ, I watched 20 minutes in that, and that was more than enough. So
did you get to the length? I don't know how, in 20 minutes, did you see the grown-up boy?
I did, and it was very upsetting.
Yes. Do you know what he reminds me of? He reminds me of Haley Joel Osment from The Sixth Sense.
Yeah, when he grew up into something went weird.
His face hasn't grown, but the rest of him has grown around his face.
Yeah, his head is quite big, but his face is quite small, and it's quite.
He still looks like the kid from Sixth Sense that's been, put into some weird human body.
Yeah, like that app where they can take your face and the face swap. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Face swap. Well, it just feels like they just face swapped his 7-year-old face with just a grown ass man, and that's what we've ended up with. So yeah, very.
And that's the same with this kid Brett Kelly as well. It's just the same thing.
Yeah, but that's not the obvious. It's just a bad film. It's in the same way that Hot Tub Time Machine 2 was just a bad idea. They should have just left it be, because that's another film we really need to redo. I fucking love Hot Tub Time Machine. What an odd way to end a podcast, a Christmas podcast about the Muppet Christmas Carol, but that's what we do. So yes, thank you for joining us for the Muppet Christmas Carol, and do join us next week for Bad Santa.
Hey, Rob here with just a quick little message. Due to the fact that we did no actual investigation before deciding next week's film, we've been unable to locate Bad Santa to stream. So actually next week's film is going to be National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. So feel free to join us, watch that, and let us know what you think. And we'll see you next week. Cheers, guys.
As always, thanks for listening. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. We'll catch you next week.
So where can people actually find us?
Oh, well, people can actually find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at HeyYouGuys80s. You can also drop us an email at HeyYouGuys80s@gmail.com. We like to read them out on the show, so please feel free to send them in. Any recommendations, just get in touch with us. We do like that. And we'd like to thank, as always, Darry Fletcher at Darry Doodles for the fantastic artwork that we're now producing.
Cheers, Darry. And a big thank you to Alexander Ortolan for the awesome intro music. He has no media presence as far as I can tell. He's very mysterious, but makes great music. So thank you very much.
And we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening.
Bye. Hey, you guys!